I want to talk to the woman who is sitting somewhere right now, looking at a life abroad and wondering, can I actually do this alone? Because I was that woman. I moved to Portugal at 50, by myself, with no partner and no built-in support system waiting for me on the other side. And in this video, I'm going to tell you the honest emotional truth of what that experience was really like. The loneliness, the hard seasons, and what eventually shifted. If you appreciate me making this type of content, gently tap that like button. Let's get into it. Let me start with arrival day. Because I think there's a version of this story that gets told, where the woman lands in a beautiful European city, steps out into the sunshine, and feels immediately free and alive and certain she made the right call. And maybe that happens for some people. It didn't happen for me. I landed in Porto with 1 or 2 acquaintances in the city. People I'd connected with before I left. People whose names I had in my phone, not friends. Not people I could call at 10 p.m. when the apartment felt too quiet. Acquaintances. And there is a particular kind of loneliness that comes specifically from that situation. From being somewhere new. Knowing that technically you know a couple of people, but having nobody who actually knows you yet. Nobody who knows your history, your humor, your bad days from your good ones. That gap between having contacts and having people is one of the hardest parts of this experience, and I have never seen anyone describe it accurately in expat content. So I'm going to try. In New York, I had a life that was full of the kind of connection you build over years. People who knew me. A rhythm of relationships that I didn't have to work for anymore because they were just there, woven into the fabric of my daily life. I gave that up when I left, and I knew I was giving it up. What I didn't fully understand until I was sitting alone in a furnished apartment in Feira on a Tuesday evening with nowhere particular to be and no one particularly expecting me was how much weight that connection had been, carrying without me ever noticing it. So I did what you do when you're determined to make something work. I showed up. I went to dinners with strangers, those expat social events where everyone is technically in the same boat and the conversation is friendly and surface level, and you go home afterward feeling both grateful you went and somehow lonelier than before you left. I went to expat meetups. I put myself in rooms full of people who had also chosen this life, hoping to find my people, a like-minded tribe, someone who got it, maybe even a potential love interest. Someone who understood what it meant to have left everything familiar and chosen something uncertain instead. What I found more often than not was couples. Everywhere. Pairs of people who had made this leap together, who had a built-in person, who went home to someone at the end of every event. And I want to be honest about what that felt like, because it didn't just feel like loneliness, it felt like a mirror. Every couple I met reflected back something I couldn't ignore, that I was doing this truly alone in a way that most of the people around me were not. They had chosen this life. I had chosen this life. But they had chosen it with someone. And in those moments, that difference felt enormous. That observation. Noticing how many couples were living this expat life side by side while I navigated it solo, was one of the unexpected hard parts of those early years. Nobody warns you about that specific feeling. The loneliness of being surrounded by people who are technically in the same situation as you, but not really. Now let's talk about the doubt. Because there were several periods, not one, several, where I sat with myself and asked hard questions about whether I had made the right decision. I'm not going to give you the specific details of those moments because some things are mine to keep. But I want to be honest that they existed, that they were heavy, and that they didn't just happen in the first few weeks. Doubt has a way of coming back around just when you think you've settled. A hard month, a lonely holiday, a day where everything felt foreign and nothing felt easy, and suddenly the question is back. Should I have done this? Is this actually working? Is this what I thought it would be? What I will tell you is that I never acted on it. Not because the doubt wasn't real, but because underneath it, there was always something quieter and steadier that knew this was right, even when it was hard. Learning to tell the difference between doubt that means stop and doubt that just means this is hard. That's one of the most important things I learned in those first years. And I don't think you can learn it any way other than living through it. Quick break if you want to understand the practical and financial side of this move before you get to the emotional reality of living it. I have videos covering my full D7 visa process and my real monthly cost of living in Porto. Links are in the description and the pinned comment below. The holidays deserve their own honest moment in this video because they were consistently the hardest stretch of every year. There's something about the holidays that makes distance feel different. Not just geographic distance from the people you love, but the distance between the life you're building and the life you used to have. I didn't have a new circle of friends established in those early years, which meant the holidays were often quiet in a way that felt less like peace and more like absence. I want to name that plainly because I think a lot of solo expats feel this and assume they're the only one. You're not the only one. The holidays abroad alone are genuinely hard, especially in the beginning, and it's okay to say that without it meaning you made a mistake. What I learned was to be intentional about that time, rather than just letting it arrive and hoping it would be okay. Making a plan, connecting with other expats who were also navigating the holidays away from home, giving myself permission to feel the missing without letting it swallow the whole season. It got easier over time, but it took time. And it took intention. Now the friendship piece. And this is the part of this video I feel most strongly about being fully honest on, because I think it's the thing solo expats least want to admit and most need to hear. I have been living in Porto for 5 years, and I am still working on building deep friendships here. Not acquaintances, I have those. Not friendly faces at the cafe or familiar neighbors in the building, I have those too. I mean the kind of deep, reciprocal, I know who you really are friendships that sustain you. Those have taken longer than I ever anticipated. Much longer. I kept going to the events. I kept saying yes to the dinners and the meetups and the organized social gatherings. And while I've built a network of friendly faces and pleasant acquaintances, people I enjoy when I see them, the deep, reciprocal friendship I was hoping to find, the tribe I was looking for, the connection that goes beyond surface level, expat, small talk, the potential love interest I quietly hoped might be sitting across from me at one of those dinners that has remained elusive in ways I didn't fully anticipate when I moved here. And I think if someone had told me that before I left, I might not have fully believed them, because 5 years sounds like enough time for anything. It isn't. Not always. Not for this. Building genuine connection from scratch in a new country, in a new culture, at 50, alone is one of the slowest and most humbling processes I have ever been through. It requires a willingness to keep showing up, to be the one who initiates, to invest in people who may or may not invest back, and to hold your expectations loosely while still believing connection is coming. That is genuinely hard work. And it never fully ends, because people move, and the expat community is transient by nature, and you find yourself starting pieces of it over again, even after you think you've arrived somewhere socially. I'm telling you this not to discourage you. I'm telling you this because I think the honest version of this story is more useful to you than the comfortable one. You can do this alone. People do it every day. But go in knowing that the social piece will take longer than you think, will require more of you than you expect, and will test your patience with yourself in ways no visa guide or cost of living breakdown will prepare you for. So what kept me going through the hardest seasons? A few things that I come back to every time I try to answer that question honestly. The first is that I had made a decision and I respected myself enough to give it a real chance. Not a 3-month trial, not a test run with an escape hatch. A real, committed, this is my life chance. That commitment meant I couldn't just leave when it got hard. And sometimes not being able to leave when it gets hard is the exact thing that gets you through to the other side of hard. The second is that I kept finding small evidence that this was working, even when it didn't feel like it was. The morning the cafe knew my order. The afternoon I navigated a complicated errand entirely in a mix of English and Spanish and came out the other side laughing at myself. The evening I sat on my terrace with a glass of wine and realized I wasn't thinking about New York at all. Small things, but they accumulated. And accumulation is how this kind of life gets built. The third, and this is the one I want to leave you with, is that I kept choosing it, not once, on the day I got on the plane. Over and over again. On the ordinary days and the hard ones. That daily choosing is what eventually turned a decision into a life. So if you're the woman I was talking to at the beginning of this video, sitting somewhere with this idea and this fear and this question of whether you can do it alone, here's what I want you to know. You can. It will be harder than you think in ways you won't fully anticipate until you're inside it. The loneliness is real. The doubt is real. The couples everywhere, when you're doing it solo, is real. The slow build of connection is real. And so is everything on the other side of all of that. The life that's waiting is real too. You don't need a partner to do this. You need a decision and the willingness to keep making it. And if you're ready to take the next step and understand what this life actually looks like financially, my full monthly cost of living breakdown for Porto is right here. Click to watch it next.